I paid $60,000 for my brother's celebration, and he thanked a stranger instead of me. So, I canceled the remaining $40,000 and watched the party crumble around him. How much of yourself are you willing to sacrifice for your family's dreams? Share your story in the comments. Hit the like button and subscribe to see what happens next. I thought family meant being kind to each other, always caring and helping, but that night showed me something very different. Family isn't always what it seems. My name is Selena Hart. I'm 35 years old, and I work as a senior financial manager in Boston. That means I help big companies and people take care of money. I've worked really hard all my life to get to where I am. I saved money, made smart choices, and sometimes I had to skip things I wanted so I could help others. One of the people I helped the most was my younger brother, Lucas. Lucas and I grew up in a small apartment in South Boston. It was old, and every winter, the heat would stop working. The floors were cold and the walls were thin, but I made sure Lucas had what he needed. Even when there wasn't much in the fridge, sometimes only a few ketchup packets, I made sure he ate. I patched his shoes with duct tape so he could walk to school, and I told him stories about skyscrapers and big buildings we would one day own. He would laugh, his eyes sparkling, and promise me, "Sis, we're going to make it big together." Our parents had a hard time too. Dad had weird jobs that didn't pay well, and Mom worked late at a diner. They relied on me, the older sister, to keep everything running smoothly. I remember walking Lucas to school, tying his shoes, making breakfast, and helping Mom and Dad with bills. Sometimes, I had to skip my own dreams of going to graduate school because the money had to go to tuition, rent, or food. I didn't mind. I loved my family. I loved Lucas. When Lucas got into college, I worked double shifts at an accounting office to pay for everything. I made sure he had tuition, books, and even a little spending money. I paid the rent when Mom and Dad couldn't, even when I had to eat simple meals or skip lunch. Lucas always said, "Thanks, sis. I'll pay you back someday." Back then, he seemed grateful. We were close, like best friends. But things started to change when Lucas got a job at a big bank downtown. At first, I was proud. He was smart, and he worked hard. But then he started dressing in expensive suits that cost more than our old rent. He stopped calling me as often, and his messages became short and cold. I would invite him to coffee, and he would say he was busy with important meetings. He started talking about his new life, his new friends, and acting like our childhood was embarrassing. He acted like our old life, our small apartment, and even me were things to forget. It hurt to watch him drift away. At family dinners, he would talk about his fancy apartment, his big friends, and his work, never mentioning me, the sister who had helped him all his life. I felt like I was slowly disappearing from his world. I told myself it was just a phase, that he would come back to me. But deep down, I felt it. Lucas didn't see me as family anymore. He saw me as a problem, a shadow of a past he wanted to leave behind. Still, I kept helping him. When he said he wanted to throw a big party for his promotion, I offered to pay for it. Not because I had to, but because I still believed in the little boy who had promised we would succeed together. I thought if I helped, he would remember me, and maybe we could be close again. Each time he took money or gifts without saying, "Thank you," it hurt more. I would lie awake at night, thinking about how he had become a stranger. Every unanswered text and dodged phone call showed me he was building a life where I didn't belong. I talked to my friend from work about it. She listened and said, "Selena, you've done enough." But I couldn't stop caring. I kept hoping Lucas would see me again, like he did when we were kids. I imagined him at his big party, maybe raising a glass and saying, "This is for my sister." That image kept me holding on, even when it hurt. The day of the party arrived. The Boston Harbor shimmered outside the windows of the Harborview restaurant. I wore a sparkling dress and felt proud, even a little nervous. The restaurant was full of 50 people, all dressed in suits and fancy dresses, chatting and laughing. A jazz band played in the corner, filling the room with music. Tables were covered with white linens and piled with food, steak, lobster, crab cakes, and desserts like chocolate truffles. I had paid $60,000 for every detail, including the endless champagne. I wanted the night to be perfect. Weeks before, I had met with Miranda Lane, the event manager, in her sleek office. We went through every detail, the menu, the guest list, the flowers, and even the music. Miranda called me that afternoon to verify the bank transfer. I felt proud, thinking that finally, Lucas would notice me. Maybe he would say my name. Maybe he would remember everything I had done for him. But when I saw Lucas standing near the stage, my heart sank. He barely looked at me. He said, "Hey, thanks for coming." and then immediately turned to a group of suited men. It felt like he was speaking to someone he hardly knew, not his sister, the person who had paid for the party. I moved through the crowd, smiling at his coworkers, but my chest felt tight. Then I overheard Camille and Dorian, two of Lucas's friends, talking by the bar to some people wearing flashy jewelry. "Oh, she's just helping with the event," Camille said, laughing. "Yeah, she's great at organizing things," Dorian added. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. I had paid for every fork and plate, and they were acting like I was just a helper. Camille looked at me, smirking, daring me to react. Dorian was busy impressing Lucas's colleagues, not even noticing me. I gripped my glass tightly, forcing myself to smile. I wasn't going to cry in front of them. I wasn't invisible. A young server caught my eye. He didn't say anything, just nodded at me like he understood. That small gesture made me feel calmer. Even if Lucas, Camille, and Dorian were pretending I didn't matter, I knew the truth. I had worked hard. I had given everything. I had made this night happen. By 8 p.m., the jazz band slowed their music. I watched Lucas walk to the stage. He took the microphone and smiled. "I want to thank someone special who's been like family to me," he said. My heart jumped. Maybe this time, he would finally say my name. Maybe he would see me. But then he pointed to a man in a sharp suit. Adrian Frost, the guy who's had my back through every deal. The room clapped. Camille and Dorian beamed. Camille said, "Adrian's been a rock for Lucas's career." Dorian added, "Absolutely, he's practically family." I felt my throat tighten. I had paid $60,000 for this night, and they were giving my place to some stranger named Adrian Frost. The money, the effort, the love, it all seemed invisible. I could feel all the years I had spent taking care of Lucas rushing back. The nights I skipped meals so he could eat. The times I patched his shoes, paid for college, and worked double shifts. All of it had been for him, and now he was pretending I didn't exist. I took a deep breath. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I smiled, even though it hurt. Then I did something they didn't expect. I opened my banking app and canceled the final $40,000 payment for the party. An hour later, everything stopped. No more food came to the tables. The bar closed. The guests, all 50 of them, left hungry. I stood up and took the microphone. This time I was ready to speak. I told them the truth about the party, about the money, and about how I had been invisible while everyone acted like I didn't matter. The truth hit harder than any lie they had told. I thought about my childhood again. The small apartment, the nights when we had nothing, and how I had made sure Lucas ate and stayed warm. I thought about paying his tuition, working late shifts, and always believing in him. I remembered the little boy who promised me we would make it big together. That promise had stayed in my heart, even when he forgot me. Seeing him on that stage, acting like I didn't exist, broke something inside me. But I realized something important that night. Even though he forgot me, I hadn't forgotten myself. I had given because I wanted to, not because I expected anything in return. And that made me strong. I looked around the empty tables and the silent restaurant. I felt a strange kind of pride. I had done everything I could. I had stayed true to myself. I hadn't let their lies or their cruelty make me small. I had taken care of my family when it mattered. And even if Lucas didn't see me as family anymore, I knew who I was. That night, I learned something important about loyalty, love, and family. Family isn't always about blood or parties or fancy words. Sometimes family is about who shows up when it matters, even when no one notices. Sometimes family is the person who keeps going, even when they feel invisible. I left Harborview that night with my head high. I didn't need anyone to tell me I was important. I already knew. I had given my love, my time, and my money. I had done my part. And someday I knew Lucas might remember, or maybe he wouldn't. But it didn't matter. I had remembered him, and that was enough. Even as I walked through the streets of Boston, with the cold wind hitting my face, I smiled. I had survived the night. I had faced betrayal and dishonor, but I hadn't lost myself. I had faced the truth, and I was still standing. That night didn't destroy me, it made me stronger. I was Selena Hart, and I knew my worth. I had loved and given, and that made me richer than any party or suit could ever make someone. I looked at my seat. It was tucked away in a corner, right near the kitchen doors. The servers were rushing past with trays full of food, and the clatter of plates and silverware made me nervous. It wasn't just that my table was bad. It felt like they had put me there on purpose. Like they didn't want me to be seen. I sat down slowly, my hands shaking a little, trying to make myself invisible. Around me, the other guests laughed and talked about vacations, new cars, and stocks. They didn't know that I had paid for all the food they were eating. Every glass, every plate, every dessert on the table, they were mine. But nobody noticed me. I saw Lucas across the room. I hoped he would look at me, smile, or wave. But he didn't. He looked away and laughed with a group of men in suits. It made me feel small, like I wasn't even there. Camille and Dorian, people I had trusted and cared about, didn't even glance my way. They were too busy talking to others, enjoying the glow of Adrian being introduced to everyone. Adrian looked polished, successful, and like he belonged. Meanwhile, I was tucked away in the corner, invisible. A woman in a shiny, sparkling dress leaned toward me. "Casual," she said. "Excuse me, can you check when the desserts are coming?" she asked, thinking I worked at the restaurant. My stomach sank and my face burned red. I didn't know what to say at first, but I finally managed. "I'm not with the restaurant, but I can tell someone to help you." She blinked at me, confused, and then turned back to her friends. I wanted to shout, "I paid for your food," but I kept quiet. I didn't want to make a scene, yet. I stood up to find a server. That's when Camille saw me. She laughed loudly, enough for everyone around to hear. "Oh, don't worry. She's used to handling little tasks like that," she said, in a voice that was sharp and mean. A few of Lucas's friends smirked at me, like I was the joke of the night. Dorian chuckled too. "She's always been good at the behind-the-scenes stuff," he added. I felt like a wave of humiliation crashed over me. I had spent weeks planning this party, pouring my savings into it, and now they were making fun of me. My hands gripped the tablecloth, trembling. I looked at Lucas, hoping he would stop them, say something, defend me. But he didn't. He just kept smiling, shaking hands with a tall man in a navy suit. Edward Stanton, his boss, looked impressed, and Lucas was enjoying the attention. Edward clapped Lucas on the shoulder. "Impressive guy you've got here, Lucas. He's clearly been a big part of your success," he said. Lucas nodded and grinned, not even looking at me. Edward seemed more interested in Adrian, asking him questions and listening to every word. That's when it hit me. Lucas wasn't forgetting me by accident. He was pretending I didn't exist. He had rewritten the story of his life in front of everyone, and in this new story, I didn't belong. Adrian was the one he wanted everyone to notice, while I was pushed into the background. I remembered everything we had been through together. I had been there for Lucas through late nights of studying, through the bills I paid, through the times he needed me. But now I was nothing to him, just a shadow. Camille and Dorian were helping him erase me. I took a deep breath and tried to calm myself. The jazz band played on, but the music sounded far away, like it was underwater. I wasn't going to let them push me aside. I had paid for this party. Every glass, every plate, every note of music, they were mine. I wasn't going to be ignored. I took my phone from my purse, my fingers hovering over the screen, feeling a quiet determination growing inside me. At 8:45 p.m., Miranda slipped through the crowd. She was wearing a sharp blazer, and her tablet glowed with a payment screen. "Selena, I need you to confirm the last $40,000, she said quietly, her voice urgent, like she could feel that something was about to happen. I nodded and pulled out my phone. But then I remembered something I had overheard earlier. One of Lucas's colleagues had been talking near the bar. He said Lucas told everyone that I was just helping with logistics. The words rang in my ears, echoing Camille's earlier jab, calling me the help. My stomach churned. Lucas had told everyone a lie. He had made it sound like Adrian did everything, and I did nothing. I opened my email to distract myself. In the guest list and event notes, my name wasn't even listed as a sponsor or family member. It said Selena, event support, tucked at the bottom like an afterthought. My heart pounded. I had spent $60,000 on this night, and Lucas had erased me from the story. Adrian was getting all the credit. I looked at Lucas across the room. He was laughing with his boss, acting like nothing had happened. My fingers trembled as I opened my banking app. The screen showed the last $40,000 payment waiting. I thought about all the sacrifices I had made, working late nights, paying bills, helping Lucas when he needed me. And now this. I tapped cancel. My heart raced, like I had just jumped off a cliff. A confirmation popped up. Payment declined. A strange calm settled over me. I had done it. I had taken back control. Within minutes, the restaurant's rhythm faltered. Servers stopped walking with trays of lobster and steak. The bar closed down. Bartenders shook their heads as guests waved empty glasses. A woman in a red dress muttered, "What's going on? I ordered a martini 10 minutes ago." Guests began whispering to each other. "Where's the dessert? asked a man with a loud tie. The jazz band played, but the music couldn't cover the confusion and murmurs of the crowd. People checked their phones, some started leaving. The room, which had seemed glamorous and fancy, was now filled with irritation and frustration. Lucas was near the stage, still smiling at first, but then a server whispered something to him. His smile faltered. Camille and Dorian, who had been laughing and enjoying themselves, looked confused as complaints grew louder. I caught Miranda's eye across the room. She was frowning, tapping her tablet, clearly trying to figure out what went wrong. But this wasn't my fault. They had pushed me too far, and I had just taken back control. The tension in the air was strong, like a storm was about to break. Guests were no longer laughing. They were whispering, checking their phones, and looking around nervously. I stood up, my legs steady even though my chest felt tight. I walked to the stage and grabbed the microphone. The metal was cool in my hand, grounding me. The crowd went quiet. 50 pairs of eyes turned to me. I took a deep breath. "I need to tell the truth," I said, my voice clear and steady. "I paid $60,000 for this party. Every plate, every drink, every song you've heard tonight was paid for by me." Gasps spread through the room. People whispered to each other. Some looked shocked. I kept going. "I am Selena, Lucas's sister, not some assistant. I funded this entire event to celebrate him. I am the one who made this night happen." I turned to Lucas. He froze near Edward, his boss. But Lucas, Camille, and Dorian had spent the night pretending I didn't exist. "They told you all someone else helped with everything. They said Adrian Frost did it all. But that is not true," I continued. Adrian shifted uncomfortably, looking around. "Adrian is not family. I am. I've been there for Lucas every step of the way, and they have tried to erase me." I could see the confusion on the faces of the guests. Some people whispered to each other. Some stared at Lucas in shock. Others looked at Adrian, who suddenly didn't seem so confident. The room had changed completely. It was no longer the glamorous, fancy celebration Lucas had planned. It was tense, and everyone could feel it. I kept speaking. "I worked hard for Lucas. I helped pay for his school, his bills, his life. And tonight, I am the one who made this party possible. They wanted to make me invisible, but I am here, and I am not going anywhere." Some guests began nodding, realizing the truth. A few whispered to their neighbors, asking if they had known this. I could see Lucas's face turning red, and he didn't know what to say. Camille and Dorian looked guilty, like they realized they had gone too far. I took a deep breath and looked around the room. "This is not just about money," I said. "It's about honesty and respect. I have been honest, and I have been there for Lucas. They tried to erase me, but I will not let that happen. I am his sister, and I will always be his family." The crowd was quiet now, listening to every word. Some people clapped softly. Others whispered, still shocked. I felt a wave of relief and pride. I had stood up for myself, and people were seeing the truth. Lucas, for the first time that night, looked small and unsure. Adrian looked uncomfortable, no longer the star of the party. I set the microphone down, my hands no longer shaking. I had taken back control of the night. I had shown everyone who really made this party happen, and who had just tried to take credit. The music of the jazz band slowly returned, but now the room felt different. People were still talking, but it was about the truth, not the lies. I walked back to my seat, my head held high. I could feel the weight lift from my shoulders. Lucas wouldn't be able to ignore me anymore. I had made sure everyone knew the truth. I had paid for the party, yes, but I had also claimed my place. I was not invisible, I was not small, and I was not a joke. I sat down and looked around the room. Some guests were still talking quietly, shaking their heads, but I didn't mind. I had done what I needed to do. I had stood up for myself. I had reminded everyone who I was and what I had done. And that was enough. The night wasn't perfect anymore, but it was real. And for the first time that evening, I felt proud. I had taken back control, and nobody could erase me. The room was very quiet. Everyone stopped talking. It felt heavy and strange, like the air itself was holding its breath. Edward looked at Lucas. His eyes were dark and serious. His face was upset, and his eyebrows were tight. Some people whispered to each other, leaning forward, trying to see what would happen next. Others held their phones, ready to record. You could tell something big was about to happen. Camille stepped closer and spoke in a sharp, loud voice. "Selena, stop this," she shouted. She snapped her fingers, trying to wave me off, but I didn't move. I held the microphone tightly in my hand. My words were strong and clear, cutting through the sound of her voice like a knife. "No, Camille," I said firmly. "You don't get to change what happened. You laughed at me and called me the help in front of everyone. Dorian helped you, and Lucas let it happen. I paid for your drinks and your food tonight, and instead of thanking me, you lied about me." Camille's face turned bright red. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Dorian stood next to her, usually smiling and charming, but now his lips were tight and his face looked angry. Lucas tried to speak, his voice shaking. "Selena, I didn't mean," he stammered. His voice cracked and then disappeared into nothing. He looked at Edward, then at the crowd. He tried to find a way to get away, but there was no escape. The guests were watching everything. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others whispered quietly to their friends. A woman in a shiny silver dress pulled out her phone and started recording. A man in a gray suit did the same. Everyone wanted to capture Lucas's shocked face on video. The glow from the screens lit up the room. It was like everyone wanted to freeze this moment forever. I stood tall, holding the microphone. I let the words hang in the air, letting everyone understand the truth. Edward crossed his arms and stared at Lucas. Lucas looked like someone had punched him in the stomach. The guests whispered louder and louder. Their shock was turning into judgment. I didn't have to say anything else. Everyone could see what had happened. I had spent years helping Lucas. I had lifted him up, helped him look good, and tried to make him successful. And now everyone knew he had lied about me. By 10 p.m., the restaurant was half empty. The lively Harbor View restaurant, which had been full of happy chatter, now felt quiet and strange. Plates clattered as people slowly left. Some complained loudly. "No more wine." "Ridiculous," one man said. A man in a velvet jacket muttered to himself as he grabbed his coat. A woman huffed angrily. She had expected a better party. The jazz band had stopped playing, and the silence felt even louder. I stayed near the edge of the room, watching everything happen. My heart was still racing after speaking up in front of so many people. Edward pulled Lucas aside near the bar. His face was serious and stern. "You said Adrian was your main sup lane," he said quietly, but his voice was sharp and cutting. "Why didn't you tell me your sister paid for everything?" Lucas looked uncomfortable. His hands were shoved in his pockets. He mumbled something about a misunderstanding, but Edward didn't soften. "Honesty matters in this business," Edward added. Then he turned and walked away. Lucas just stared at the floor, his shoulders slumping. I saw everything from across the room. A strange feeling mixed inside me, part satisfaction, part anger. Lucas's perfect image, the one he had worked so hard to create, was starting to crack, and he knew it. Camille and Dorian were still angry at me. Camille marched over to me, clicking her heels sharply on the floor. "You ruined everything, Selena. You made this night about yourself, not Lucas," she shouted. Dorian nodded angrily. "We were celebrating Lucas, and you made it all about you." Their words stung, but I had already heard enough lies from them. They had called me the help and erased everything I had done. Now they are trying to make me a bad person. I stood tall, my jaw set. I would not let them make me feel small. I picked up my purse and walked toward the door. Their voices faded behind me. I didn't look back. I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of seeing me upset. Outside, the cool night air of Boston Harbor hit me like a fresh breeze. My hair blew slightly, and the lights from the harbor sparkled on the water. My phone buzzed in my hand. It was Lucas. "I'm sorry, Selena. I didn't mean it," the message read. My thumb hovered over the reply button, but I remembered how he had lied and treated me like I was nothing. I deleted the message. My chest felt tight but strong. I felt powerful and determined. I would not let him hurt me anymore. As I walked to my car, I saw Miranda near the entrance with her tablet still glowing. She looked at me and caught my eye. "The contracts are officially canceled," she said in a short voice. "The rest of the invoices go to Lucas now." I nodded. I had paid $60,000 to help Lucas, and he had tried to bury me. Now he would pay the price both literally and figuratively. The restaurant's lights flickered behind us, and the fancy feeling of the night was gone. I kept walking, leaving it all behind me. A week later, my office felt calm and peaceful. My desk was my safe place. My computer hummed softly, and my coffee mug clinked gently as I moved it. An email popped up from Fiona Caldwell, a friend I had trusted for years. "Selena, you did the right thing," she wrote. "It took courage to stand up to them. You have my support." Her words warmed me. They reminded me I wasn't alone. I felt a quiet strength inside me. I felt like I could keep moving forward. Word about the party spread fast. Lucas's career started to fall apart. Edward demoted him, saying he could not be trusted. Social media exploded with videos of my speech. People were calling Lucas a fraud. He had to pay $40,000 for the rest of the party he hadn't paid for. His carefully built image, the one he worked so hard on, was crumbling before everyone's eyes. Camille and Dorian didn't escape the consequences either. A local newspaper wrote about the family drama at the gala. They said Camille and Dorian had ignored their daughter's generosity. Their friends stopped inviting them to parties and charity events. A photo showed them standing alone at a fundraiser, looking awkward. Their usual charm no longer worked. They had enjoyed Lucas's spotlight for years, but now they were in the shadows, exposed for their lies. Adrian, the friend Lucas had claimed was loyal, also faded from view. He skipped industry events. People whispered about him. They wondered if he had helped Lucas lie. Lucas no longer talked about Adrian. Their fake friendship and family bond disappeared as quickly as it had been made. I didn't care about Adrian. He was their problem, not mine. I blocked Lucas, Camille, and Dorian on my phone. Their calls and messages stopped after a few days. I felt lighter, like a heavy weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I focused on my work. I made a presentation that impressed my boss. After work, I met my friends for drinks. We laughed at funny stories that had nothing to do with family drama. For the first time in years, I felt free. I could live my life on my terms, surrounded by people who valued me. Looking back, I learned something very important. True family isn't just about being related by blood. True family is about respect, trust, and love. Lucas, Camille, and Dorian showed me that loyalty cannot be assumed, even from people close to you. Setting boundaries is not just about money. It's about protecting yourself, your heart, and your happiness. I had given everything to people who didn't see me, who didn't appreciate me. But I promised myself that would never happen again. I would always stand up for myself, no matter what. I had the courage now, and I would not let anyone make me feel small again. After that night, my life slowly became happier. I spent more time with friends who truly cared about me. I laughed more, worked harder, and made decisions for myself. I no longer worried about Lucas, Camille, or Dorian. They could deal with the consequences of their lies. I was done carrying their problems. Every time I thought back to that night at the Harbor View restaurant, I felt proud. I had spoken the truth, even when it was scary. I had shown everyone that lies and unfairness could not hide forever. And most importantly, I had shown myself that I mattered. I was strong. I was smart. I was worth respect. From that moment on, I knew I would never let anyone make me feel small again. I would protect my heart, my money, and my happiness. I would help those who were kind and honest, but I would never let anyone take advantage of me. I had learned a hard lesson, but it was a lesson I would carry with me forever. True family, true friends, and true loyalty are about respect. And I had finally found the courage to surround myself with people who valued me for who I really was. No lies, no cheating, no pretending. Just honesty, love, and respect. I had finally taken back my life, and it felt amazing.